Have you ever felt like a leaf in the wind, tossed about by life's storms without any control? Have you ever felt your mind spin in a whirlwind of anxiety, doubt, and fear, wishing you had a switch to just turn it all off? What if I told you that within you lies a force that, once trained, can become an unshakable anchor, an impenetrable fortress? Imagine having the ability to face adversity not with panic, but with calm. To look at uncertainty not with fear, but with curiosity. What if you could turn criticism into fuel and failure into learning? This isn't a superpower reserved for monks or ancient philosophers. It's a skill that can be cultivated, a muscle that can be strengthened. Society teaches us to seek comfort, to avoid pain, and to look for quick fixes. But true strength is not born in the absence of challenges, but in our ability to face them. Every time we retreat from discomfort, every time we surrender to our negative thoughts, we are weakening this internal musculature. Isn't it time to start training? Think of all the opportunities you've missed for fear of failure. Think of the energy you've wasted worrying about things that never happened. This life, lived in reactive mode, is not your true essence. It's time to break these mental chains. Training your mind isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about becoming wise, resilient, and above all, free. And the best part is that this journey begins with a single step, a single decision. It's not about an overnight transformation, but a continuous and rewarding process. So, are you ready to discover the strength that already exists within you? This path to mental fortitude begins now, and I promise you that while it will be challenging, it will be the most liberating journey of your life. Do you dare to begin? If you're seeking more emotional resilience, mental clarity, and want to learn how to navigate life with more strength and wisdom, this content is for you. So, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, because with each video you'll build a stronger mind and a more fulfilling life. The power of the present moment, the foundation of mental fortitude. Our mind is a tireless time machine. It constantly transports us to the past, where we relive regrets and hurts, or launches us into the future, where we manufacture scenarios of anxiety and worry. We live anywhere but in the only place where life actually happens, the now. I remember a phase when my mind was my worst enemy. I would spend sleepless nights ruminating over mistakes from years ago and worrying about problems that might never arise. I was exhausted, living in a constant state of high alert, a prisoner in a reality that only existed in my head. It was then that I discovered, almost by accident, the power of the present moment. On a particularly chaotic day, I sat down and, not knowing what else to do, I started paying attention to my own breath. The air coming in and out, the slight movement of my chest. In that instant, the deafening noise of my mind subsided. The past and the future dissolved, and all that existed was that simple act of breathing. It was a revelation. Mental fortitude doesn't begin with grand strategies or complex philosophies, but with this radical act of coming home to the present. Practicing mindfulness is the fundamental exercise for training the mind. It's not about emptying the mind as many believe, but about observing it without judgment. It's like sitting on the bank of a river and watching your thoughts float by like leaves on the current, without jumping into the water to try and grab them. When you anchor your attention to something tangible, your breath, the sounds around you, the sensation of your feet on the ground, you interrupt the cycle of rumination and anxiety. You teach your brain that it doesn't have to react to every thought that arises. This is crucial because most of our suffering doesn't come from events themselves, but from our interpretation and reaction to them. By cultivating presence, you create a space between the stimulus, an external event, a thought, and your response. In that space lies your freedom and your strength. Instead of reacting impulsively, you gain the ability to respond with awareness and wisdom. You learn to acknowledge anger without being consumed by it, to feel sadness without drowning in it. Getting started is simple. Dedicate a few minutes of your day to practice. Sit in silence and focus on your breath. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently bring it back without criticism. Every time you do this, you are strengthening your attention muscle. This is the foundation upon which all mental fortitude is built. Before you can change your thoughts or control your emotions, you must first learn to be present to observe them. The peace and strength you seek are not in the past or the future. They are here, waiting for you in the stillness of the now. Embracing discomfort, the gymnasium of resilience. We live in a culture that worships comfort. We seek the perfect temperature, the most ergonomic chair, the traffic-free route, and the frictionless life. The message is clear. Discomfort is something to be avoided at all costs. But there's a fundamental paradox here. By systematically fleeing from discomfort, we become incredibly fragile. A mind that is never challenged becomes weak, just as a body that never exercises. True resilience, the ability to bounce back from adversity, is not forged in comfort, but in the fire of voluntary challenge. I vividly remember the first time I decided to take a cold shower on purpose. It seemed like a masochistic and pointless idea. The first few seconds were an absolute shock. My body screamed for me to get out. My mind generated 1,000 excuses to quit. But I persisted. And then, something magical happened. After the initial shock, a deep calm took over. As I stepped out of the shower, I felt a wave of energy and clarity that lasted for hours. In that moment, I understood it wasn't about the cold water. It was about teaching my mind a powerful lesson. I can handle discomfort. I am stronger than my initial impulses. This principle applies to all areas of life. Procrastination, for example, is often an act of avoiding the discomfort of a difficult or boring task. By postponing it, we seek immediate relief but create much greater stress in the long run. Mental strength is developed when you face that task head-on, when you sit down and work on it for 5 minutes, even when everything in you wants to run away. Every time you do this, you rewire your brain. You teach it that the satisfaction of overcoming a challenge is far greater than the temporary relief of evasion. Voluntarily seeking out discomfort is like going to the gym for your mind. It can be something physical like an intense workout or a cold shower. It can be something social like starting a conversation with a stranger or making that difficult phone call. It can be something intellectual like learning a new skill that frustrates you or reading a book with ideas that challenge your beliefs. The goal is not suffering for suffering's sake, but the expansion of your comfort zone. You are showing yourself, in a practical and undeniable way, that you are capable of handling more than you thought. When life inevitably presents you with an involuntary discomfort, a loss, a failure, a crisis, you will not be unprepared. Your mind will have already gone through the training. It will know that the initial feeling of panic or pain is not the end of the story. It will have the confidence that it can navigate the storm because it has already navigated many smaller ones that you chose yourself. So start small. Choose one small discomfort to embrace today. It could be taking the stairs instead of the elevator or meditating for 1 more minute when your mind begs to stop. Each of these small acts of courage is a brick in the construction of your inner fortress. The inner dialogue, rewriting your mind's script. There's a conversation happening inside your head right this moment. A constant monologue that narrates, judges, and interprets every aspect of your life. For many of us, this inner narrator is a relentless critic. It points out our flaws, reminds us of our mistakes, and predicts our failures. You're not good enough. You're going to mess this up. Nobody cares what you think. This negative self-talk is perhaps the biggest saboteur of our mental strength. It erodes our self-confidence and keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-limitation. There was a time when I believed everything this voice told me. If I made a mistake at work, the voice said, "You're incompetent." If a relationship ended, the voice said, "You're unlovable." I treated these thoughts not as suggestions but as irrefutable facts. The result was a life of anxiety and low self-esteem, where I avoided any risk so as not to give that voice more ammunition to attack me. The major turning point was realizing that I am not the voice in my head. I am the one who hears it. And if I can hear it, I can also question it. Training your mind to be stronger involves becoming a conscious editor of this internal script. The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to how you talk to yourself. Catch yourself in the act of self-criticism. Without judgment, just notice. Interesting, there's that thought again. This simple act of observation already creates separation, taking the power away from the thought. You shift from being the thought to being the observer of the thought. The second step is questioning, a technique borrowed from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. When a negative, self-critical thought arises, treat it like a prosecuting attorney in the courtroom of your mind. Challenge it. What evidence do I have that this thought is 100% true? Are there other ways to see this situation? What would I say to a friend who was thinking this about themselves? Almost always, you'll find that these thoughts are exaggerated generalizations, distortions of reality based on fear and insecurity, not on facts. The third step is replacement. After you've identified and challenged a negative thought, consciously replace it with a more realistic, balanced, and compassionate one. This doesn't mean lying to yourself with toxic positivity, "I'm perfect." It means finding a more helpful perspective. Instead of, "I am a failure," you might say, "This attempt didn't work, but I've learned from the experience and I'll do better next time." Instead of, "Nobody likes me," it could be, "Some people may not connect with me, but I have valuable relationships and I am worthy of connection." This is a workout. At first, it will feel artificial and difficult. The critical voice is an old habit. But every time you intercept, question, and replace a negative thought, you weaken the old neural pathway and strengthen a new one. With time and practice, your inner narrator can transform from a harsh critic into an encouraging coach, an ally on your journey. And a mind that has itself as an ally is a truly strong mind. Discipline is freedom, not a prison. The word discipline often evokes images of restriction, punishment, and joylessness. We think of waking up early against our will, eating salad when we crave pizza, working when we want to relax. We see discipline as a prison that prevents us from doing what we want. However, this is one of the biggest and most damaging misunderstandings about mental strength. True discipline is not about restriction, it's about creation. It's the tool that allows us to build the life we truly desire, rather than being slaves to our momentary impulses. Discipline is the highest form of self-love. It is freedom. For years, I struggled with inconsistency. I would start diets and quit within a week. I would join a gym and go for a month. I would decide to learn an instrument and give up after a few frustrating lessons. I told myself I lacked discipline, as if it were an innate personality trait I was missing. I believed that freedom was doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. But this freedom kept me trapped. Trapped in a body that didn't give me energy, trapped in a mind that couldn't focus, trapped in a cycle of starting and never finishing. The shift occurred when I reframed my understanding of discipline. I realized that discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do things you hate. It's about choosing what you want most over what you want now. I didn't want to wake up early, but I wanted more the peace and productivity of a quiet morning. I didn't want to go to the gym on that specific day, but I wanted more the health and confidence that come with a strong body. Discipline is the act of aligning your short-term actions with your long-term values and goals. So, how do you build this liberating discipline? The secret is to start ridiculously small. The mistake I used to make was trying to change everything at once. The key is what James Clear calls an atomic habit. Want to build a meditation habit? Start with 1 minute a day. Want to write a book? Start with 1 sentence a day. Want to exercise? Start by just putting on your workout clothes. The initial goal is not the outcome but the act of showing up. It's about building the identity of someone who follows through on what they set out to do. Another powerful technique is to remove friction for desired actions and add friction for undesired ones. If you want to exercise in the morning, lay out your clothes and shoes next to your bed. If you want to eat healthier, don't buy junk food. If you want to read more, leave a book on your nightstand and your phone in another room. You are designing your environment to make discipline the path of least resistance. Over time, discipline creates a positive feedback loop. As you keep small promises to yourself, your self-confidence grows. With more confidence, you feel more capable of tackling bigger challenges. Discipline stops being a struggle and becomes part of who you are. You free yourself from the tyranny of mood and impulse. You don't wait to feel motivated to act. You act and motivation follows. This is true freedom, to be the architect of your life, not just a passive spectator of your own whims. Practical Stoicism, the circle of control. In the midst of life's chaos, one of the deepest sources of anguish is our relentless attempt to control the uncontrollable. We worry about what others think of us, about traffic, about the economy, about the weather. We spend an immense amount of mental and emotional energy on areas over which we have little to no influence. The Stoic philosophy, practiced by emperors like Marcus Aurelius and slaves like Epictetus, offers a powerful and timeless antidote to this suffering, the dichotomy of control. The core idea is simple yet profound. In any given situation, some things are within our control and others are not. Within our control are our thoughts, our judgments, our actions, and our responses. Outside of our control is virtually everything else. The actions of others, our reputation, our health, to a degree, the outcomes of our efforts. Mental strength, according to the Stoics, comes from the wisdom to focus all our energy on the first circle and to practice acceptance regarding the second. I remember a work project I invested months of effort into. I was convinced it was the best proposal and that it would be approved. When it was rejected, I was devastated. I felt like a failure, angry at the decision makers, wronged. My mind went into a loop of what-ifs, and it's not fair. I was focusing entirely on what was outside my control, the final decision of others. Stoic wisdom would have taught me to reorient my focus. My effort, the quality of my work, my dedication, that was within my control. The final outcome, influenced by countless factors beyond me, was not. Applying practical stoicism in daily life is a transformative exercise. When you feel anxious, frustrated, or angry, stop and mentally draw 2 circles. In the inner circle, list what you can control in that situation. In the outer circle, list what you cannot. For example, if you're stuck in traffic and late for an appointment, outside your control are the other cars and the time. Inside your control are your breath to stay calm, the music you choose to listen to, the decision to call ahead to say you'll be late, and your attitude upon arrival. Peace doesn't come when the traffic moves, but when you stop fighting against it. This is not passivity or resignation. On the contrary, it's a strategy for more effective action. By not wasting energy on the uncontrollable, you free up an enormous amount of mental resources to focus on what you can actually do to make a difference. You become an agent of change in your own life, rather than a victim of circumstances. The practice of accepting what we cannot change, called amor fati, love of one's fate, by the Stoics, is the other half of the equation. It's about embracing reality as it is, not as we wish it were. This doesn't mean liking bad events, but accepting them as part of the fabric of life and asking, given that this has happened, what is my best response now? This question is the essence of resilience. It moves us from the role of victim to the driver's seat. By mastering the dichotomy of control, you don't eliminate life's problems, but you remove the second layer of suffering we add to them, the suffering of resistance and useless worry. You build an inner serenity that doesn't depend on external conditions to exist. The strength of self-compassion, the antidote to self-criticism. In our quest to be strong, we often confuse strength with harshness. We believe that to motivate ourselves and improve, we must be our own drill sergeants, barking orders and criticizing every failure. Self-criticism is seen as a necessary tool for growth. However, research and contemplative wisdom show the exact opposite. Chronic self-criticism doesn't lead to improvement, it leads to anxiety, depression, and the fear of trying. The true engine of resilience and growth is not self-criticism, but self-compassion. Self-compassion, as defined by researcher Kristen Neff, has three main components. Self-kindness, treating yourself with the same care you would treat a good friend. Common humanity, recognizing that suffering and failure are part of the shared human experience, not a personal defect. And mindfulness, observing your painful feelings without suppressing or exaggerating them. It's about being an ally to yourself, especially when things go wrong. I spent much of my life believing that being hard on myself was the path to success. If I failed a test, I would spend days calling myself stupid. If I made a social blunder, I would ruminate on how awkward I was. This approach didn't make me better. On the contrary, it paralyzed me. The fear of triggering that inner critical voice made me risk-averse. I would rather not try than have to face my own cruel judgment. The discovery of self-compassion was like finding an oasis in the desert. The shift began with a simple question: how would I treat a friend who was going through this? The answer was always drastically different from how I treated myself. I would offer words of comfort, remind my friend of their qualities, tell them that one mistake doesn't define them, and encourage them to try again. Why did I deny myself this same kindness? I began to consciously practice this compassionate inner dialogue. When I failed, instead of attacking myself, I would try to say, "This was difficult, and it's okay to feel bad. You did your best. What can we learn from this?" Self-compassion is not self-pity or an excuse. Self-pity says, "Poor me," isolating us in our suffering. Self-compassion says, "This is hard for me right now," just as it would be for anyone, connecting us to our common humanity. And it's not an excuse to not improve. In fact, self-compassion is a far more powerful motivator than shame. When you feel safe and accepted, even in the midst of failure, you have the courage to look at your mistakes honestly and to try again. Shame makes us want to hide our mistakes. Compassion gives us the security to learn from them. Training your mind to be stronger requires creating a secure inner base. Self-compassion is that base. It's what allows you to get up after a fall, dust yourself off, and continue the journey. Start today. The next time you make a mistake or feel inadequate, pause. Place a hand over your heart, feel the warmth, and take a deep breath. Offer yourself a few words of kindness. Acknowledge that you are doing your best in a complex world. You will discover that this gentleness doesn't make you weak. It gives you the unshakable strength to face any challenge. So, at the end of this journey, remember that training your mind isn't about reaching a final destination of unshakable perfection. It's about the process, the daily practice. It's the conscious choice to find calm in the chaos, to embrace discomfort, to rewrite your inner dialogue, and to treat yourself with the compassion you deserve. Every mindful breath, every challenge faced, every negative thought questioned is a repetition in the gym of your mind. Imagine the person you can become. Someone who isn't knocked over by the waves of life, but who learns to surf them with skill and even joy. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control events, but we can control our response to them. And in that response lies all our power and all our freedom. And now I challenge you. What is the one small thing you will do today to start training your mind? Will it be 1 minute of meditation? Will it be tackling a small task you've been putting off? Will it be replacing one self-critical thought with a compassionate one? Choose one thing and commit to it. Share your decision in the comments below. Your journey inspires us all. We are in this together, building stronger minds one choice at a time. Until next time.